All right, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where you've been, if you've been under a rock or you've been hiding, but let me just say, what's these 3 words? Pmdg Efb for the 737. That's like 5 words, but
Yeah, I
where have
think
you
you
been? Yeah,
I
I
think you messed
exceeded
that
the.
up.
But electronic flight bag, why has it been such a huge topic lately? Because PMDG is going to have promised an EFB for their 737. And before we start the discussion, let me just let you know that when it comes out, it is going to work and it's going to work good because we're talking about PMDG. They don't put out half-assed stuff. It's going to work. However, the problem we've been having is that we've heard about this thing, was it 6 months, a year ago?
Probably. I
Maybe?
mean, since before the first 737 came out, they've been
Exactly.
talking about it.
And we have watched Flight Factor. Let's take that back. That explain. We have watched Fly by Wire. We have watched Microsoft Flight Sim. We have watched
Phoenix.
Airsoft
Phoenix.
and Phoenix all come out with an EFB that also works and does the function of managing the plane systems like the AP, the chocks, the blocks, the loading, the fueling, etc. of what we expect from an electronic flight bag, and also performance numbers for some of these planes. And we're thinking, how hard could it be to make an EFB for the 737 from PMDG while we don't have it in our hands already? It's like we're making a huge deal out of a little thing, a part of our flight experience. Because honestly, your EFB is only used before takeoff, pre-flight, and after landing. After that, yeah, and charts during the flight. What has taken PMDG so long to make? We have no idea, but my question is it going to live up to the hype when it finally drops?
Mm.
That's my thing. What is it going to contain that's going to excite us so much that they say, yes, finally it's here and it is better than I expected? Is it going to live up to the hype?
I think that's what our concern is, right? Like we all been asking for the EFB. We're all excited to have an EFB in a 737. But the question now is like, all right, we've waited so long. Is it gonna live up to the hype? And is it going to disappoint us, right? It's like, what is it going to be? We haven't had we don't know any details about what this EFB is going to be capable of. We know we've seen some great capabilities in the FMC of the 737. And I'll go ahead and start with my personal expectations of the
Mm.
EFB. I think we all have, I think where disappointment starts is where your expectations are let down. So if you have low expectations, you're less likely to be let down. But to be honest, most of us have very high expectations for this particular product. So I know I have very high expectations. And my expectations are anything that we see in that FMC right now in the 737 will be moved or at least copied over to the EFB so that we can go and any of those, changing from kilograms to pounds, like all those crazy customization and functions that we like never use in the 737 will now be in the EFB, right? As a page or a few pages, as one of the many things. I expect to be able to do ground services from the EFB. I expect to be able to import my flight plan straight out of SimBrief using the EFB. Same thing with payload, fuel. Like I expect to literally be able to do all that stuff from right in the EFB. Performance calculations. I expect that as well. Takeoff and arrival calculations, charts, Navigraph charts, or various ways to get charts in your EFB. I expect that as well. It's like because we have the fly-by-wire EFB. Great job by that team. We have the Phoenix EFB. Great job by that team. The Aerosoft team has done a great job. All the EFBs that exist, honestly, are really good. Even some of the GA planes out there have some really good EFBs. And so PMDG being themselves and being one of the leaders in our community when it comes to development, there's no reason why they couldn't have pulled somebody from any of those teams over to help them build this EFB and possibly make this one of the best EFBs. So I have extremely high expectations for this thing. And I just hope that it lives up to it. And if it doesn't, you know, it's not make or break, right? I don't think people are going to go out of their way to buy the 737 because it has an EFB now. Like, how many people out there you think are like, oh, I'm not buying a 737 until the EFB comes out? Nobody.
Uh,
Like,
I'm surprised that a freebie, because as far as I know, they're not charging for it. They're just going
No,
to add
it's
it to
gonna
the
be a
plane
free
as an
update.
update.
Yep.
I'm surprised that a free thing added to a plane is generating this much like level of. It's become a running meme now
It
on my
is.
stream.
It is a meme.
Whenever
It is.
I'm using a plane that has an EFB in it, it's like a running meme. But I'm surprised because it's free. It's going to be free. They don't owe it to us. They never did they promise it before the
Uh,
737 dropped? I
they
don't.
said that they were planning on doing it, I think.
Right. So I'm surprised how much buzz this is generated for something that's going to be just an addition to what you already have, and you're not paying for it. But I think it's become the standard now. Any decent plane, quote unquote, needs to have an EFB in it. It just enhances your flight sim experience. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
does.
yeah.
That's what everybody does in the real world now. All the airlines have an electronic flight bag, which is an iPad basically, or something of the sort built in to your sim. And the pilot has it, or it's in the plane, or whatever they do, and it keeps it charged and all that stuff. Punch numbers, calculations, etc. And then for simming purposes, you get to open and close doors, you get to remove the chocks, you get to set up your pushback. Instead of going to the FMC to do that, which is not realistic in the real world, because no FMC in the real world handles your doors and your pushback. So
Yeah,
having the EFB is like a sim thing, which is pretty cool to have.
yeah,
And so maybe that's the reason why it's generated so much buzz and people want this thing, because we see how, just for me, glancing over to my left is my EFB. Oh, charts. Okay, good. This is my taxi route. Okay, good. Let me remove the chocks. Good. Okay, let me set the GPU or the air card or whatever the case may be.
yeah.
And so I guess that's why it's got so much buzz, but it's just that PMDG is so meticulous about what they put out that it's taking forever, and we have no patience, as you know,
I think the
because
thing too is I talked about how I have all these high expectations for it, but one of the things is like I feel like it has to be over the top now because it's taken so long. Like if they were to come out and do the bare minimum, like it came to my mind while you were talking, like what are some of the bare minimum features that they would need to have in this EFB for you to think that this is like, all right, this is good, right? And I'm thinking like for me, it's being able to import a Simbrief flight plan without using the whole like have to download a file and stuff like that. Like literally just click a button, just like in the fly by wire or in the Phoenix, and it just imports your whole flight plan, payload, all that. Like I want that. That's one thing I personally want. Everything else can go. I need that, and I need charts. Those are the two main things. But if if it's a super basic EFB and it took them 3 years to make it, like what the heck did you spend all this time on doing? You know what I'm saying? And
it's
so
true.
because it's taken so long, we're like, it's gonna be like this EFB should be the equivalent of a whole new plane. Like I'm hoping this is gonna completely transform my entire 737 flying experience, which I don't actually expect it to. I don't think it will. I personally think that people are gonna get the EFB, people are gonna hop back on the 737 trending bandwagon because it's a new EFB and it's new, it's hot, it's popular, and a week later go back to flying everything else they're flying because it's the same plane. It's the same 737, probably with the same sounds. Everything you love and hate about the 737 is not changing. All you're doing is you're getting an iPad.
Mm, mm. Wow. It's funny because shout out to Flight Factor. You're like, Flight Factor, how did they come into this? Their EFB was the first one I've used in any flight sim, and that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And you could watch YouTube videos on that
Yeah.
AFB.
I
You
remember
could pull up
that.
the internet on that AFB. You could go to a website. That's how I used to get my Navigraph charts. I used to log into Navigraph in the EFB in that plane. That's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it still works to this day. It's just that we don't fly the plane a lot, you know what I mean, for whatever reason. But that was 5 years ago. So EFB's been around for a minute. And Flight Factor did it first in X-Plane. And they had the functionality of the loading of the airplane, the loading of the baggage, the fuel. They had the browser window, they had the lighting
Yeah.
in there, and all that stuff. So that so it's not a hard thing to do, obviously, but it's probably hard to program to get all that stuff in
Yeah.
the way you want it and the way PMDG does their work. Their stuff is going to be top quality anyway.
Yeah.
So that's probably what it is. But it's just fascinating that here we are, like every 5 minutes. Oh, when's the EFB dropping? When's the EFB dropping? You know what I mean? At least they're not going to come out with a title that says EFB canceled, and you guys are asking too much, i.e., the A330 mod in X-Plane. So
Oh
yeah,
man.
I
Oh
know.
my
But
god.
Yeah, yeah. But EFBs are the future. It's here to stay. And every plane that comes out now, unless you're some old plane, you better have an EFB when you drop.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
you just better. So
Yeah,
anyway, we'll
it's
see
I
what
think it's
happens.
become a standard. We kind of
Mhm.
expect it now. It's one of the arguments about EFBs is that it's not necessary, right? In real life, pilots have a airline issued iPad or they have their own iPad, and that's their EFB. That's what they use to log their flights, to look at their flight plans, check weather, do things like that. And but an aircraft itself, in simulating an aircraft, the plane doesn't usually come with EFB, right? So it's like I see that some developers will argue that hey, EFB is not shouldn't be a standard. It's not necessary because that's an extra addition added on too. And honestly, I actually agree with that. Would we like an EFB in every airliner or every plane we fly? Absolutely. It adds so much more customization to the aircraft, so much more functionality, so much ease of use. It's really a quality of life improvement, in my opinion. Um, but is it necessary? No, no.
Yeah,
If you come out with an amazing, and this is kind of me talking to developers or future developers working on project, like don't hold your aircraft back if the EFB is the problem, right? Like if you have
yeah,
some amazing like study level, semi study level, like high fidelity aircraft that you're working on, and you have dreams of putting an EFB in it, but you're stuck on that. But the plane is great. Don't hold back. Like all right, listen, this doesn't have an EFB right now, but we're working on one in the future.
yeah,
But the plane is great. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
it's not necessary, but it's just a bonus, and it makes things and I think it's gonna make us love the 737 even more than we like it now.
Yeah, it's true. It's gonna add to your overall experience,
Absolutely.
definitely. Because I like having an EFB. It's just it. I find that when I'm flying a plane, I tend to just pan over to the left to see the EFB, and like, oh, it doesn't have one. Oh crap. Let's go back. It's become the standard. So yeah,
One
you
thing
are
I
right.
tend to see myself do, and I like it when EFBs have this feature when you're sitting there, you're just cruising, and there's nothing you need to do. Like you got like 3 hours left in your flight. But I like to look over at the EFB. I know Zebo has this and a few other planes, and you'll see your actual flight track or your flight progress. Like maybe there's a map
Map.
on there that shows you
Mhm.
where you are in the world right now, or there's like a counter showing how much time left, like stuff like that. I love seeing that in the EFB because it's just obviously you have all your instruments that tell you how far you are, but it's just cool kind of seeing a more like normal way to look at a map
Exactly.
and see your progress. So
Yep. True.
imagine if
True.
they like incorporated like Volanta or SimToolkit Pro or something
Dude, now it's see, don't give people hope, man. That would be sick.
Honestly for all these years, SimToolkit Pro for me was my EFB. Like that, like
Hmm.
whether a plane had an EFB or not, I had SimToolkit Pro running in the background. I had my freaking charts in there. I had my SimBrief flight plan in there. I had my everything in there. Same thing with even with Volanta. And I was like, man, I just wish this was in a plane. you know.
Right.
So
Right. You know,
maybe one day SimToolkit Pro
one
like, hey,
day.
we have an
One day.
EFB. So
Right. Anyway, guys, tell us what you think in the comments below as usual. Have that debate. Tell us if we're full of it or you agree or disagree or what your take on this whole AFB argument for PMDG is. We look
and if
forward
you're
to your
watching this
response.
after the EFB is released, did
Uh-huh.
it yeah, did it deliver? We might have to make another
Exactly.
video after part two.
Exactly. Did it deliver? There you go. Part two. Watch out for part two coming up after release. That's it.